Hello, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Leveraging Neutral Host for Flexible and Scalable Indoor Private Cellular Deployments, presented by Future Technologies, Ericsson, and Fierce Network. I'm Andrea Anderson, and I'll be hosting this webinar. Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping notes. Additional resources are available in the handouts window. If you close one of the windows and need to reopen, click the name in the top navigation bar. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand within 24 hours. To learn more about our speakers, head on over to the speaker bio window. And finally, there will be a Q&A session at the end. If you have any questions for our speakers, you can enter them anytime in the Submit Questions window. Now, I'd like to introduce our speakers. Peter Cappiello, CEO, Future Technologies. Gary Hill, Chief Innovation Officer, Future Technologies, and Scott Arnett, Head of Sales, Global Strategic Enterprise, Ericsson. All right, gentlemen, over to you.
All right. Thanks, Andrea. Hi, Pete. Hi, Gary. Good to see you guys this morning. Glad we could do this webinar together today, and appreciate your time here as well. So, Pete, why don't we kick off? Give us a little bit of overview of Future Technologies.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So, Future Technologies has been a connectivity transformation company in North America the last 25 years. You know, very focused, United States, Canada, a little bit in the Caribbean, but I'd say our notoriety has been around building cellular infrastructure and specifically private cellular. We were definitely at the early stages of that about 15 years ago, doing 2G, 3G systems to provide data connectivity in the military sector, and then moved into private cellular in the industrial markets in about 2017. You know, the markets that we focus on as a company are in the industrial market space, transportation, energy, utility, manufacturing. We work a bit in the federal markets. We have a top secret clearance, so we do quite a bit in the military and civilian agencies. But you know, big growing area for us is the enterprise in building market. So we're doing a lot of work with different large enterprise customers in terms of how do they modernize their in-building from legacy 4G to 5G. We're going to talk about that a bit today. But on the connectivity transformation journey, you know, cellular is one part of that, but you know, as a system integrator, we have to work with our customers that have fiber infrastructure wired. They have Wi-Fi, they have public cellular. We're looking at adding private cellular. So, you know, we're excited to kind of partner in that life cycle management with our, you know, 300-400 customers that we work with annually across that modernization. And we're seeing more and more edge and use case solutions in those vertical markets. So, you know, sometimes we're stepping in and helping something that's already started. In other cases, we're doing greenfield. But as a business, we're focused on partnering with our customers in those markets, solving for connectivity.
Yeah, and I know you hit on a few different connectivity elements there. To your point, we'll touch on that, I think, here in a few moments. As well, and just a teaser, our partnership is pretty special. We'll talk about that in just a few slides here as well. Let me just give a couple of comments around Ericsson. Also, not everybody has awareness of who Ericsson is or what Ericsson does, but Ericsson actually has a very rich heritage, which is celebrating 150 years next year. So
congrats.
Pretty proud of that here at Ericsson. Number of different technology innovations, as you would expect, over the 150 years. But the most recent and most prevalent for this dialogue, of course, is around cellular radio technology. And while maybe not everybody knows the name, what you might not know is that most of the connectivity in the US, if you're connected to a cell tower anywhere, is likely an Ericsson radio. Not 100%, but more likely than not, you're connected to an Ericsson radio. So we power a lot of the cellular macro networks around the globe and have a tremendous position within the US across the three major providers. So that sets in motion really the next iteration. If you go to the next slide for me, Pete, what we've done in the macro is now being recasted, if you will, and recrafted around enterprise and leveraging that radio technology, that connectivity into an enterprise pursuit and an enterprise solution orientation. So you see a couple of different or a few different vertical segments that we put our products into. One is private 5G, which we'll talk about here in this webinar as well, around cellular technology for private use cases. 5G coverage, or neutral host, as it's also called, is one element of that. And we see these two distinctives really harmonizing together in many cases. And I think we'll talk on that here in a few minutes as well, as private 5G and 5G coverage. How do these two things relate? While they may actually provide a different outcome, they're relatable in some degree. So we'll talk on that. And last but not least, our wireless WAN portfolio is providing that UE connectivity inbound, from wireless to cellular, and capabilities around SD-WAN, security, and so forth. And so this is the portfolio that we call casually Ericsson Enterprise within the Ericsson larger portfolio.
Hey, Scott, on the prior point about your market position, I think two things for the audience to kind of recent data. Recently, Gartner released their Magic Quadrant for 5G RAN, and Ericsson was picked as one of the leaders in the world, which is a great accomplishment to be the leader there. I think 150 years of work paying off, as you described. But then specific to the US market, I think what's important for everyone to know, you mentioned kind of notionally, but I think, if you look at the recent contracts with T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, I mean, you have 60+% of the RAN market and growing based upon some of those contracts where you're actually gaining market position, like the recent deal with AT&T. But that's a huge advantage from a technology perspective, but also the carrier relationships, having those large contracts. I think that puts Ericsson in a very unique position in the market as we look at cellular upgrades, whether that's public cellular, private, or hybrid between those two. Having that scale and footprint and the carrier relationships is, I think, really unique to Ericsson.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Pete. I think we'll hit on this theme a few times during the webinar here this morning. But that relationship equity based on what we've been able to do with each provider has allowed Ericsson to be in a position where we can provide a solution that's been standardized across all three. And this is where that uniqueness factor comes in. It's what we call the dot in casual form. We'll provide a little bit more depth on that. But you're right, that business relationship is special. And the expectation and the outcome from that is something that we believe the enterprise and those that adopt the technology will benefit from.
Yeah, and I think, like, as we look at how do we help our customers modernize their cellular infrastructure, this slide provides those three swim lanes. But taking the legacy Cradlepoint enterprise experience and understanding how enterprises want to consume connectivity using your NetCloud platform, and then blending that with all the carrier experience. I mean, that's really a unique value proposition in terms of portfolio. And we're excited to see that all come together underneath this strategic go-to-market to help these enterprises modernize their cellular infrastructure, from that cellular WAN, bringing in the public 5G coverage, and then in situations where private networks make sense for some of those operational technology type use cases. Again, you guys are in a fairly unique position based upon those strategic moves that Ericsson have made to build out that portfolio.
Yeah, well said, and right on point with the intent here is ensuring that in the midst of a carrier relationship which is very mature, that Ericsson also understands the dynamic of how the enterprise wants to consume and ensuring that we can develop, the solution and the strategy around enterprise in conjunction with what we're doing in the carrier side as well.
Yeah, and Gary, maybe this is a good time to bring you in. You spent 30 years on the customer side at a large U.S. manufacturing company as VP of IT and CTO. You've been with us for 5 years, which we're thankful for. But do you have any point of view from your prior role at the enterprise, and then now being with an SI for the last 5 years in terms of this portfolio?
Yeah, I'd say the neutral host solution of Ericsson is really going to be a game changer for in-building cellular. Coming from, again, a large enterprise, indoor coverage was really challenging with different carriers, a DAS solution, a lot of hardware negotiation with each carrier. Hey, who's going to pay for that? So I think the neutral host solution we're going to talk about more today is really going to simplify options for the enterprise to bring all three carriers in. Maybe traditionally you had one carrier because you subsidize all your enterprise devices, so maybe you pick one carrier in the building. But today, with bring your own customers in the building, you really need all three carriers. So doing that in a cost-effective way is very important. Also with a single architecture, again, we'll dive into that here in a moment, but where I came from, we literally had 3 different DAS systems physically in the building, one for each carrier. So a lot of complexity, a lot of upgrades for each product. So again, you'll see that simplification. I know Scott's mentioned the dot radio. We'll dive into that as well. I think that is a unique offering in the Ericsson portfolio, the dot architecture. It simplifies deployment from cabling to power, and we'll dive into that in a minute. So yeah, pretty exciting times for enterprises relooking at in-building coverage for public cellular, and also the opportunity to merge that in with private 5G in the building if that's a use case you have as well.
Yeah, well said, Gary. Well said. So Scott and I have been discussing our collaboration, but we've been working together, Future Technologies and Ericsson, for the past 10 years. So as the system integrator, we're trying to leverage our 25 years of experience to help design and deliver these connectivity solutions. We're looking to partner with customers to build the right digital blueprints to help them transform. Also being mindful of the ecosystem in terms of what devices are there, what other network is there, and work with the leaders in each of the vertical markets to basically enable cellular first connectivity. And partnering with Ericsson, across the portfolio, they have the wireless WAN, they have the security, they have neutral host and private networks. We're excited about bringing all of that together, building on our 10-year partnership. We mentioned earlier Ericsson's position with the carriers. We've been fortunate to work with Ericsson to help deliver some of those 5G modernization projects to the tune of about $150 million of delivery. So when we're partnering together in the cellular side, I'd said it's tried and tested in terms of our partnership to deliver carrier-grade networks, but in this case, kind of getting that to be at the enterprise level. And then we've also worked on some nice private network projects, including a large investor-owned utility in the Southeast. There's about 1,200 sites delivered on that private network. I believe that's the largest private network in the country at this point. We also, in the last couple of years, have been helping modernize 30 Tier 1 sports stadiums using some of the Ericsson Radio Dot at 30 plus Tier 1 sports stadiums. But this year specifically, we're seeing a lot of demand in this in-building modernization, where we're spending a lot of time educating customers on what their options are. Some customers have an old 4G system that's a single carrier solution. Some have a legacy DAS system that might have 1, 2, or 3 carriers, but that was funded by a third party, and now they're looking at how do they get 5G, how do they get access to some of this new cellular spectrum, C-band that's available. So again, taking the portfolio and carrier experience and also the enterprise experience that Ericsson acquired through Cradlepoint, marrying that up with our 25 years of connectivity transformation, and specifically the 10 years of partnership with Ericsson. We were really excited about how this partnership can really grow together and really create a unique value proposition to these enterprise customers looking to, embark on their cellular journey as the enterprise. But Scott, did I miss anything there? Or is that?
No, I mean, I hit on it before. I don't think you missed anything, but it is a special relationship and a special partnership. And so we genuinely appreciate the partnership that we have with Future Tech. I think a couple of themes there that you hit on as you kind of walk through the dynamics as we look at this market, this industry, there's some level of agility and flexibility needed to make these partnerships work well. And I think that's something that Future Tech has demonstrated time and time again as we learn more about the market, understand its needs. There's some flex that's needed in how we deliver on those solutions, and I think that's where this partnership has really mattered the most is really adopting some of those net new things that we need in order to be successful together.
I think too, it's been good.
Yeah.
Future Tech, smaller entity, flexible, agile, as you mentioned, Ericsson. But I will tell you guys did a nice job bringing your practices and maturity from the carrier space into the enterprise space, which has been good. So the project management, the planning, I think all those things you guys are really good at scale. You're bringing those capabilities to the enterprise deployments, which is very good for us, and we get quality installs.
Yeah, good. Well, let's get into a little bit of context here around this in-building coverage, and we'll also walk into some of the private 5G use cases, and maybe it's good to sort of start there. I talked to my team a lot about outcomes. What outcome are we trying to achieve with a given technology? The technology can be interesting, it can be cool, but what outcome are we trying to achieve? And this slide sort of helps set a very basic context for the problem statement that comes around from in-building coverage, right? We spend a lot of time indoors, right? We know that the stat on here is 90%. Whether that's right on point or whether we just acknowledge we spend a lot of time indoors, and cellular, our mobile devices have become a necessity. Right, to what we do. A lot of how we operate these days is tethered to our cell phone. So that cellular coverage is significant. And you see that the middle stat there is that there is a growing complaint around the cellular coverage in building. And I'm going to show a slide as to why that is, right? This isn't an unknown phenomenon. It is a known phenomenon as to why this is an issue. But as we grow more and more used to using our cell phone for everyday purposes, including maybe even business calls inside of an office building, right? Net new office buildings, a lot of times they're not putting in tethered telephones anymore, right? There's no need in many cases to do that, or at least that's the desire. But with that desire, you have to have good coverage inside your building, right? And we know as we use it more, we're going to have more download speeds. That's just a fundamental that is there. But I think more and more as we look at in-building coverage, the outcome is relatively easy to understand. I want good cellular coverage inside my building, right? Or inside my office or inside my space. And I know you put this next chart. One key element as we think about connectivity here, right? We talk about cellular. Wi-Fi, of course, is a dominant technology within most facilities, most homes, et cetera. We have to remember Wi-Fi was not produced with cellular in mind, right? So we think about mobility, we think about the type of connectivity that we need to generate the ability for voice to operate correctly, et cetera. These are things that are important when we think about the difference of the two. But this slide, a bit of a techie chart, but it helps sort of contextualize why this is becoming an increasing issue, right? Is as the frequency that carriers are using to deliver a radio signal is changing, right? And as it changes, it's harder for that signal to penetrate certain surfaces, certain building walls. right? And you also have to think about how buildings are being produced, or how, new glass is being put in, where you might have a film now on that glass to help keep the building cooler. All of these things impair that signal from getting inside the building, right? And this is where this problem statement is not decreasing, it's actually increasing in the amount of need to find a better solution to deliver in-building coverage. Now, one other point, and I'll pause because I'm in sales, so I can get into that mode for a minute.
Yeah,
To be honest on
that's
that
all
one.
good.
But when we think about technologies here, Gary mentioned it earlier. It's not as though there haven't been technologies that solve for in-building coverage. The dominant one we think about is DAS in there, right? So DAS has been around for quite some time. Varying stories around DAS, but it's been a useful technology, right? It has been the technology of choice, if you will, for delivering in-building coverage. It is probably the technology of choice for the carriers in days gone by, right? This is the technology that they would use to deliver what we casually call coverage extension, right? Which is different, right? Is that when they deliver their own network extension, coverage extension is usually what we call it. That's been done by a DAS. But here we talk about, what is the next phase of DAS? What is that next thing, right? So let me pause there because we can get into the technology here in just a minute as well. But did that resonate with you guys? Is there something I missed there?
No, that makes sense. But just to take like the frequencies on the right and have this kind of map to, let's say 10 years ago when you're looking to put a 4G DAS in to support 3G and 4G, you were probably getting that in the low band and maybe in the bottom portion of the mid band. That's identified in the bottom two rows of data. And that was serviceable for 4G applications and the way of working at that point. Now everybody's looking for 5G. That's the experience people are expecting. Those legacy systems, they're either single carrier systems that only support 4G and only support, let's say, low or mid band, or they're a DAS that only supports those bands. What we're looking to do as the integrators modernize where we can add that 5G mid band, which we refer to as C band, to really provide that higher capacity 5G experience. And these legacy systems, whether they're a single carrier solution or a 4G DAS, they don't have the upgradability. So as we look to tech refresh the 4G systems, we're going to get the benefit of these larger lanes on the highway to do the real 5G data. So that customer experience will be enhanced a bit. Of course, there's wavelengths that go along with that from a physics perspective, but it's really around us put more lanes on the highway and really getting the benefit of 5G. Ideally, with all three carriers on board, so that way the dynamics of the bring your own device that Gary mentioned, we're putting in systems that are, ready for all three carriers if and when that's a need, because of Ericsson's position to provide signal source from all three carriers. So maybe moving from the let's say maybe the rabbit hole of physics into well, which markets are we seeing this? But do you want to overview this for us, Scott?
Yeah, I'll be brief. I mean, you can see the different tiles there. I would honestly say that this is a ubiquitous, really problem statement and outcome need. Just a matter of who maybe is adopting it faster based on where they're at in each vertical segment. But we've delivered neutral hosts as well as private 5G in many of these segments across manufacturing, airports, hospitality. You see the tiles there. And if you think about the use case, so I talked high level about just the need for connectivity. But when you think about from an enterprise, not just from a business need standpoint, that's fundamental, that's good, right? We need connectivity in our phone, but there's worker safety issues many times. Unfortunately, that's a practical reality to the world we're living in. And so worker safety is a dominant concern for many of these verticals as they think about how do I make sure that if somebody needs to call 911, that they have the right level of connectivity to be able to do that right in their space. And so that's a top issue as we look at the various
Scott,
verticals there.
just to double click on that, because we haven't said this yet, but these are all license band for the neutral host product. This is carrier license bands providing that life safety 911 capability, correct?
That is correct. These are all licensed band. The best way to think about it is it's the macro network inside the building, right?
Yeah.
Is sort of the most casual way to think about it. So it's going to operate exactly how you operate on the macro.
And maybe I'm going to jump ahead to kind of, we've been speaking about the dot product, but this, and we're going to jump into a virtual tour that Gary did at our Living Lab in Atlanta, but maybe we should, walk through the different network elements and differentiate that to, why is dot different than DAS? So maybe Scott, if you want to have a first pass at that, and then we can comment on it.
Just a couple of quick comments. You see the pictorial there that sort of referencing. You see three what we call basebands. Those are the carrier portion, and then there's a shared portion above that, what we call an IRU, and then the dot. Right, as you stated, we sort of teased that name a little bit earlier. Right, that's a shared infrastructure portion of this. When you compare the simplicity of this solution versus, say, traditional DAS, DAS is traditionally done per carrier. It's very bulky, takes up a lot of room and space in the basement or wherever it might be housed inside that facility. And then the amount of cabling required is substantial with traditional DAS. And so DOT is intended to do a few things. One is resolve that complexity of the amount of cabling, the amount of product to something that's much easier to deploy and much lighter in that deployment. That's one element. And then, Pete, you were hitting on another theme earlier. We talk about how to gain access to some of those higher frequencies that give more bandwidth capability for the users. That's something that's not easy to do in a DAS, right? There's augmentation that has to be done there. With a DOT, it's a software upgrade, right? So we think about this as not just comparative simplicity, but also from a capability standpoint. This is I want to be careful not to say future proof, but this helps negate an upgrade cycle that would be traditional from other technologies just through the ability to software upgrade within what's been deployed there. So it's really hitting on a couple of different key themes there that we think are significant for the enterprise. Well,
just to make that tie that into something, one of your deployments in New York City, it's a high-end commercial real estate asset, high-rise building, but they have about 1.5 million square feet of coverage area. But they actually built out a DAS room that was about 2,000 square feet to support traditional DAS. It's like a big bowling alley type setup. And instead of using DAS, they used the Ericsson DOT solution. And we literally went from a room that would have been 2,000 square feet down to, using about 350 square feet. It's like 6 racks of equipment. So you basically have your, based upon the size of the building, you have these dots in the ceiling, which are kind of more like a Wi-Fi access point. You're using Cat 6 to connect from that dot to the IRU, which is typically sitting in the IDF on each floor. And then you're running fiber to the room that formerly would have had the DAS. But the structured cabling, it's low voltage, so that's lower cost. We're not running coax from the IDF out to the antenna. We're running fiber from the IDF down. The cost to install is much less because it's low voltage versus using coax, which is heavy and requires a lot of testing, including in some cases PIM testing. And then in the head end itself, the MDF, now we have 6 racks of equipment that are operating very efficiently from a power consumption perspective and also don't require the cooling. So when we compound all of those items, that kind of leads us back to the slide that I moved off of before. But we're reducing the power consumption, we're reducing the space in a significant manner. The installation, and then the other part that customer pointed to is, in those high rises, they have tenants that move in and move out, and maybe their needs are different. But in the DAS world, it's add, moves, and changes. But now, when we're looking to do add, moves, and changes, we're talking about really how many IRUs we should have in the IDF, how many Cat 6 runs we should have, which is low voltage. Of course, we have to plan that with the carriers, but the change management for that is much easier than legacy DAS in terms of dealing with coax and all that specialized work. In a lot of cases, these buildings they have folks that can handle the make ready work of the power, the fiber, and the Cat 6. So it's really helping the enterprise, take cellular, make it more around the enterprise type of attributes, and do it in a way that's more cost effective in terms of the day one cost. And then also in cases where you have add, moves, and changes, which has been a little bit of a gotcha. Some folks that had the DAS funded by somebody else, the add, moves, and changes accumulate over a 5-year or 10-year term. I think this simplified solution, going back to this image, I think Ericsson's put a lot of thought into how do you take cellular, make an enterprise with the form factor of the dot being more like Wi-Fi, with the LAN connection being the Cat 6, and then ultimately shrinking down that IRU to sit inside an IDF, running fiber down, and then reducing the footprint of the DAS, by as much as 5 times reduction in the MDF space. I mean, it's pretty meaningful what you guys have done in terms of getting this product ready for the enterprise.
Yeah, really a great summary there, Pete, of a number of different value equations. But and I like the example that you provided, because it is one that we've seen replicated. Is if you go into a traditional building, there you typically have these very large rooms that were built for DAS. And to be able to come in and put a footprint in there that's so significantly smaller is very meaningful.
Hey, Scott, we have a question from the audience. I know we've mentioned multiple times, hey, the 3 carriers, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mo, your radio support that. Are there any challenges, either from your perspective or the enterprise, working with the 3 carriers, or have you guys already sorted all that out with the carriers?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, we started off the webinar talking about the special relationship that Ericsson has been afforded with the carriers based on the business relationship that we have, and that is continuing. What we see in the market is the carriers are adjusting as well as they look to monetize their spectrum differently, and we fully respect that they need to do that based on how much they've invested there. And so when we look at processes to get access to their spectrum, that is a process that we understand and we're following with each of the 3 providers that are there. Is it changing? Yes, it does change from time to time. Does it mean we can't gain access? No. It just means that we're following new processes as they come along, and we're working alongside each of the carriers to understand not just the process, but also as we work through the dynamics of how an enterprise consumes. Those 2 things hopefully will continue to harmonize together with there. But I don't see any issues. We're just following net new processes sometimes, and maybe there's some delays that we have to work through with that. In there. And I know, Gary, you tossed that to me, but I think FutureTech has a special relationship in this endeavor as well. People yourself might have a view of how you gain access to some of the spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're very thoughtful around partnering with the mobile network operators and working in a collaborative manner. Ericsson's solution is approved by all three carriers, which is I think a big accomplishment. You know, some of the traditional DAS vendors might have 2 of the 3, 1 of 3. You know, it's because there is a lot of rigor to getting certified by the carriers. So being certified by all 3 is a big step. And then the commercial side, we've been able to work with the 3 carriers and Ericsson to have a commercial model where we can raise a project and basically provide the design, follow the process that Scott identified. But we are able to provide all 3, you know, carriers at this point following those processes. So multiple years of work by all parties to do that. You know, we're trying to make that, you know, not only possible, but, you know, easier for the enterprises to, you know, work with us and collaborate. You know, if they want to, let's say it's a new building, they want cellular as one of the amenities. You know, how do we enable that? If they have a legacy 4G system that's not working well and they want to modernize the 5G, we ultimately want the enterprises to focus on their primary, you know, business, and then have us come in and help them with the right solution. So maybe I think we've kind of talked about it a bit. You know, maybe at this point we'll jump in and show some of the technology at work with the video that we prepared. Is that good for Scott and Gary?
Yeah, works for me. It's a good time.
All right, let's do that. So we're going to go on mute and enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar today. I'm Gary Hill, Chief Innovation Officer at Future Technologies. Prior to joining Future Tech, I spent about 35 years in the industrial IoT industry for Georgia Pacific Coke Industries. So all the technology you're seeing today, I've actually had to use in the field, and look forward today to giving you a tour of our living lab. This is where we have our private cellular networks, routers, use cases to kind of show customers, educate them on what private cellular is all about. So again, welcome to the webinar. Today we're going to talk a little bit from an Ericsson perspective of obviously their router product lines. So think cellular routers. We're going to talk about neutral host as well as the EP5G private 5G system. Hey, one of the common things across of the platform for neutral host and for private 5G is the dot radio system. You'll see several of these in the facility. This is the dot that transmits both neutral host for your making cellular calls in building. Also the same dot does private 5G for a private cellular network. So a good radio system from Ericsson, the dot. The other thing too we talk about is the user interfaces. So we're running the EP5G live here in our lab today. In fact, this webinar broadcast has come to you through our 5G network. Here we can kind of talk about the user interface. This is what the enterprise user would see managing the EP5G from my dot radio systems. You can see everything's up and running. To SIM management, you're going to see a robot in the warehouse later who's actually connected to the network. From enterprise cellular router perspective, NetCloud Manager is the platform used to manage the cellular router. So here we have an active E400 router in the environment. He's connected to our 5G network, 5G SA. So again, an important product, NetCloud Manager, for managing your enterprise routers. We also have a product in our lab called OneLayer. Does a nice job of overlaying your private 5G network to do SIM management. As you can see here, it's done a nice job of classifying all of our SIMs into cellular routers, mobile phones, cameras, a variety of devices. So an important tool when you're trying to manage those thousands of devices on your private network. Hey, now we're in our edge compute room. So this is a server room. We're running our edge cores for the private network. We're going to see the EP5G rack here in a moment. We're also running applications here, edge applications, AI, computer vision, as well as other apps that you might run at the edge in an industrial type environment. Before we look at our rack system, we also have portable versions of our private networks. So for trade shows, for customer proof of concepts. So here's an EP5G. We have an affordable form factor. Everything is self-contained. We can take a few dot radios, actually broadcast at a trade show or at a location for customers to try the network out. Let's go look at the rack system here. You'll see the EP5G components a little closer up. So again, we're running live on this system here.
This is basically the set of capabilities. Here we got dual network controllers. This is where the software is running to run the private network. These are redundant in case of loss of issue of one controller fail over to the other. You have your baseband unit, so this is doing all the communications out to the dot radios. We also have an outdoor micro radio if you need outdoor coverage. GPS is also very important to private cellular, a GPS signal coming from the roof, so the radios are in sync when you're handing over from radio to radio. So that's the EP5G technology stack. So this is a tower training area. A lot of our installations are outdoors. We have a field services organization. So we have training towers here in the back. These are actually at-scale towers, cell towers, kind of cut down to about a 40 to 50-foot height to train our technicians, also to educate our customers kind of on what they might need to expect if they're building an outdoor private cellular network. So this area we call the arena. This is where we do all of our use case demos. As you can see, various tables set up with devices, applications. So again, all of these are connected to the EP5G network for customer demonstrations. We also in the arena have two towers we built out to hold our radio network. So again, this tower has more than just the EP5G. As you can see, that round dot radio is up there. But hey, we have microwave, we have Wi-Fi, we have 60 gigahertz. You'll also see a camera up here. So again, all this is integrated together to do our demonstrations. Also show you some of the Ericsson other product line. We mentioned the cellular routers, enterprise routers. So here we have a wide variety of those, from a new product here that's actually a switch, can support Wi-Fi APs. These are kind of business class routers you may see in an office. Here's an industrial router. So again, we have the full product line, can do testing, demonstrations of the product here in our lab. Speaking of cellular routers, we have a demonstration here in our warehouse environment of a Mir 100. This is an autonomous mobile robot. Typically, you'll see those in Wi-Fi in most implementations. Here we've taken a cradle point Ericsson router, basically integrated that into the router on the robot to put it on the private network. Richard, you come here and we can get a closer shot of basically the integration of this. So today he is running on the private network. We see more and more customers wanting to put their robots on a better wireless network for better handoffs, better coverage. Also density, you can get literally thousands of cellular devices on the network versus a few hundred on a Wi-Fi network. Hey, this is the area we call factory assurance testing area, one of our labs that we have to do customer QA testing of equipment. So for all of our projects, we bring the technology into our headquarters here. We do testing, configuration. We even have hardware and software that lets us emulate the customer's network. So again, this gives us good quality installs. Get it configured here and then ship it to our sites for installation by our field services team. So I want to show you guys our lab on wheels. So everything you've seen today in our living lab, we put in a portable form factor in partnership with Intel. 16-foot trailer we can take on the road to trade shows, customer locations. Hey, we can do a generator if we're off-site if we need to. We also have internal batteries. Again, we call this a lab on wheels, basically taking innovation on the road. So we'll take a quick peek inside. We also have portable towers, masting that we can take. So this example is a blue sky mast. We can go to 40 to 50 feet here. So we can actually put up a pretty good coverage area network for a private cellular network. Take a portable private kit, take the radio network, put it up on a mast that we're broadcasting typically within an hour. We'll take a quick look inside. So again, all the use cases we talked about, from LoRaWAN sensors to industrial routers. We also have Starlink, so for backhaul, we can do cellular or satellite. So literally out in the middle of nowhere with battery and Starlink, we can really go any place. We also have edge compute, so we can run edge compute applications here. In the kit, we can bring a portable private network. Also have a small workspace here. Hey, I appreciate your time taking a tour with us in our living lab. Hope you enjoy the rest of our webinar. Thank you.
Great stuff, Gary. I always enjoy the Gary show, but that one was well done.
I was thinking the same thing actually when I was watching that. I was like, that's a pretty good video, Gary.
Appreciate someone adding the music to
it. we should, if we had it playing while you were doing it, you could have done a little dance or something. That would have been good. So I appreciate Gary kind of walking us through and showing us the infrastructure we were talking about, the tech stack, and bringing it to life. So we appreciate that. But as we shift towards the back half of the presentation, we didn't speak about private networks a whole lot. We focused the first portion of the discussion on neutral host, but private networks, as I mentioned earlier, we've been working for about 15 years on the private cellular side. But specifically with Ericsson, we've done a lot of cool projects dating back to 2019. We did a project for a robotics company that was modernizing logistics facility up in Canada. We also did an early stage mining deployment up in Canada where we did both. And that was a bit challenging because it went into the pandemic phase where we actually designed and delivered for a large potash mining up in Canada a private cellular system that did surface and underground. Our team did a great job kind of using virtual tools to kind of do a remote site survey, but we actually delivered that system in collaboration with a large carrier in Canada and actually outperformed the design. So, our teams did a great job there. I mentioned earlier the large utility project that we worked on where we were helping a large investor-owned utility in the Southeast. And maybe this slide kind of helps provide, some of the example vertical markets, but 1,200 sites for an investor-owned utility on a predominantly outdoor private network, helping the utility do their grid modernization, connect their fleets, and basically, modernize their overall operation. Recently, we've done some projects in the airlines space, helping a large global airline modernize one of their operational hangars in terms of modernizing how they work, doing connected worker, tracking tools, kind of some of the larger instrumentation tools there. And one of the case studies that we're going to highlight today is in the manufacturing sector, where we've been working to help modernize one of their larger warehouse facilities recently using the solution that Gary highlighted. But for future technologies, it's building all of that processes and learnings. Kind of over the last, as I mentioned, with Ericsson, we've been doing it for about 6 years on the private network side. And how do we take those learnings and apply them to all these different verticals? And maybe, Scott, you could comment on the verticals where you're seeing adoption, but wanted to kind of, make sure everyone understands this isn't new to us. It might be new to some of the folks on here, but we've been working together, kind of building that space for some time, but, it's definitely taking up pace now.
Yeah, and maybe a few different quick points, right? On the verticals, you were hitting on many of them already. We think about manufacturing, logistics, mining, ports and airports. These are where we've seen quite a bit of gain in there. And the way I look at private networks, if I were to try to simplify this just for a moment, one is, Gary actually started the video talking about the dot and showing the physical dot, if you will, and he made a comment about that dot delivering both public and private network on it. And we don't have time to go into the complexities of spectrum, et cetera, but that dot from an indoor perspective is used to deliver on neutral host or private in that realm. And a lot of times we see where companies just need basic connectivity, where Wi-Fi won't go because it's power limited. Various reasons why Wi-Fi doesn't work in certain segments or certain areas, outdoors in particular, you mentioned is there. So one of it's just basic connectivity where Wi-Fi can't do, cellular can pick up there. But the second segment is a bit more interesting, is where you need cellular connectivity to enable a certain use case. And Gary, at the very end of the video, was showing a little autonomous vehicle there. When we get into robotics, when we get into autonomous vehicles, for which many companies are investing quite heavily in, cellular technology helps enable that outcome in a much more seamless way. And so that the phrase I use a lot of times is moving from connectivity as a commodity to connectivity that matters, right? When does that connectivity matter is when you need certain outcomes that are enabled via cellular.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, for us, it's one of two things, or sometimes both. But we're looking at how do we do coverage? Because, like, let's say it's outdoor, Wi-Fi might have a limitation. Like in the mining example I mentioned earlier, Wi-Fi can only cover so far. Cellular has a different waveform to provide that coverage, or advanced use case. So, like the autonomous mobile robot example that you gave. And in a best case scenario, you actually have both, where you need that coverage and advanced use cases. So, we have one case study here related to the private network, and we have one case study that we have on the neutral host to kind of, provide examples. So we worked with Ericsson on a project to help a large manufacturing customer modernize one of their large logistics centers. So, customer profile, over 10 billion in revenue, over 12,000 employees, global footprint. The big challenge there is the Wi-Fi coverage and handling the density and the ever-changing environment of these warehouses. For this customer, they're bringing different product in at different times of year, and the attributes of the layout are different. So what we found is by using the Ericsson DOT solution, in cellular specifically, we're able to provide a robust network where we went from approximately 25 access points of Wi-Fi down to 4 radio dot access points, which is a pretty significant reduction when you think about the build out costs for the make ready, the cabling and the power and whatnot. And then also from a maintenance perspective, there's a reduction, but it wasn't at the sacrifice of performance. Actually, from the design to execution, the network actually exceeded expectations. After multiple turns of product, we were able to benchmark the testing 3 different times to make sure that as the product mix changed and the density changed, that the cellular infrastructure held up. And we thought that was a great opportunity for us. But Gary, maybe from your perspective, being that you're on the manufacturing side, if we're looking at manufacturing and then the adjacency of logistics, do you see any high runners that you want to cover off on?
Yeah, I would say kind of what you mentioned earlier around warehouse manufacturing. There's a lot of moving equipment. It could be autonomous robotic, could just be fork trucks that have a Cradle Point Ericsson industrial router on them, the handheld Zebra. So there's a lot of movement, mobility in these facilities. So again, it fits real well with the cellular infrastructure. And again, you get to broader coverage with fewer assets. Very, very important from a just cost of deployment and maintainability. So I think those for indoor with the DOT is a really great use case. This one we're showing here, the customer really I think experienced an aha moment once they got this in place and started connecting everything over cellular indoors. So again, look for those mobile use cases. Things where people are moving around the facility, that broader coverage. I think that's where you're going to see the biggest benefit.
Well, and that brownfield example you're providing, where a lot of our customers have legacy lift devices, whether that's in a seaport, where they're ship-to-shore cranes or RTGs. But like we're finding a lot of opportunity where cellular is just a better mobility solution for those lift devices. They're moving a lot of money over the course of the year, and having consistent, reliable, resilient connectivity is critical for their operation. But we're using an Ericsson cellular WAN device to basically get that lift device on net, and then we're connecting to the ruggedized tablet or whatever the user device is for that application, in this case, WMS system. But maybe on the neutral host side, Scott, you could walk us through the case study here.
Yeah, I'm going to be very brief because I wanted to spend just a few minutes on Q&A, make sure that we capture some of those. We have about 5 minutes left here. This one is a pharmaceutical company that we were able to enable with neutral host. Large facility. They wanted ubiquitous coverage across their campus. and the way that we accomplished that was with the Ericsson dot that is there. So very much aligned with the conversation in terms of the value of where the dot was brought in to deliver a ubiquitous connectivity experience for neutral hosts within these facilities that are there. And you notice the only other element is the initial footprint, right? So many times we're starting with an initial footprint, and we'll expand out the system as either the enterprise grows or the need grows, or both that are in there.
One question that came up in the chat, Scott, is just clarity on the Ericsson dot. It's taking in what we call signal source, but the spectrum from the carrier and then retransmitting. Is that right?
Yeah, so it depends on the dot and what we're doing. When we talk about neutral host or private, you certainly can be completely within the licensed bands, and the dot will deliver on those, and those would be from the MNOs, right? And they would deliver on that. There's also the industry spectrum side of that for private, and in some cases, enterprises will want to use industry spectrum, CBRS in this case here, to deliver. And so the dot has those radios inside of the dot to be able to transmit that out to the enterprise.
Yeah, another question that came in is, in these modernization projects, who's funding these DAS projects? I think it's topical, and I think maybe there's multiple options for who's funding it. The carriers are funding some specific type of asset types. There are some digital infrastructure funds that are focused on funding, but then we're seeing a lot of uptick where the enterprises want to kind of control the connectivity in their building and modernize themselves, and we're actually seeing a shift towards the enterprises are actually the payer. A lot of our customers are big operational companies. They want to deploy CapEx, they want to have control, but I mean, are those the primary payer models that you're seeing out there, or any shifts?
No, I think just on the latter one. I mean, this is actually, I think, a positive shift, right? There has been a natural progression in how carriers are funding these. I mentioned coverage extension before, where many times the carrier would fund the DAS deployment for the purposes of coverage extension, and as that has sort of saturated from the subscriber count, we've seen a natural progression where now the enterprise is funding it. And what that means is not just, yes, they're laying out dollars for that. That's a big change, but they're now having a voice on what this technology needs to have and how it should look and how it should operate within their building. So that's a good shift in the market, but it is a shift nonetheless.
Yeah, and one interrelated question. The audience is asking, where do we think square footage the Ericsson dot is a good fit? I think for us as a system integrator, it really depends on the value per square foot. Like if it's someone's HQ and you have 50,000 square feet in New York City, but it needs to be well taken care of, it could be 50,000 square feet because of the value generated by square foot. If we're looking at a hospital or mixed use commercial real estate, it might be 250,000 square feet is kind of where that makes sense. But I think it really depends on the value per square foot for the customer. But do you have any point of view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think well said, right? There's no limitations in the technology, right, to go down in square footage necessarily, but it is that value equation that you mentioned. And so we start to see a more a larger embrace around the 200 to 250 and above type square foot. It doesn't mean you can't go lower if there's enough value for the enterprise, but we see that's sort of the threshold for where we see a larger embrace.
Yeah, to kind of switch over to the private network side, folks are asking, do we see private 5G displacing Wi-Fi? I'd say as a system integrator, we see kind of a mixed technology, where Wi-Fi is there and private 5G will coexist. In some cases, primary backup, but we see coexistence more on our side with some exception cases. But
Yeah, we agree, and maybe I'll end here because I know we're gonna run out of time, and I'll invite Andrea back in here just a second. But just on that same note, we agree there's coexistence in Wi-Fi and cellular. It's just a matter of the use case, right? That's going to drive that particular architecture. So with that, thank you both for this time. I'm going to invite Andrea back on to close us out of the webinar.
All right, thank you so much for that discussion and presentation. That is all the time we have for today. If we were not able to answer your question, we will do our best to follow up after today's webinar. As a reminder, a recording of this session will be available on demand within 24 hours. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time.